Hello, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment, a good one. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on CFL Talk, our co host and, of course, our inimitable CFL expert, David Morassutti. David, interesting week this week.
Oh, very, very interesting. I mean, this is the it's funny because this is the final grind of the season, and uh rarely do you see a quarterback get traded. We saw that in 2019 with Zach Rouse getting traded to Winnipeg. And now we're starting, it seems like it's going to start a trend, in my opinion, with the Trevor Harris news.
Yeah, even though some quarterbacks like Michael Riley have changed locations, it was him changing because he was a free agent. In this case, it is actually a trade. And you're right. You almost have to go back to Ricky Ray to get to the point where an established quarterback is traded. It doesn't happen in the Canadian Football League.
No, because that's the one position every team not only covets, they spend the most money on, they spend the most time developing. Like, it's the most important position. I mean, it's the most important position in football, but in the CFL, once you got a good quarterback, you lock that down as much as possible.
Yeah, definitively, a team is a direct reflection of their quarterback, which brings us to the need and desire and the requirement for Edmonton to trade their starting quarterback. We know, that the starting quarterback in Quebec was, of course, the one, the only Trevor Harris. But it seems the Edmonton Elk have decided they're going to go with the young guy.
The thing, and I think what this does, first and foremost, is it takes that question right out of the picture. Right, if you're Taylor Cornelius, Dakota Prukop, it's going to be tough to try to push yourself forwards knowing that Trevor Harris is right behind you. So I think first and foremost, I think what the Elk are doing is we're going to let these guys know that it's on them. It's their job. They're going to go ahead and do it. Um, Whether that's the right decision or not, I mean, they call this a football decision, but unfortunately, if you're Edmonton, the only quarterback that's gotten you a win this season just got traded away to Montreal. And
Yes.
this is somebody that has been to the Grey Cup. He's proven that he can be a top quarterback in the league. Has done very well for Edmonton since he joined them, and now just because of a couple, I would say because of a couple of games, because really he wasn't bad to start the season. His last win against Calgary, he was dominant, and all of a sudden it's a problem. I'm a little when they say it's a football decision, it kind of makes people think that it's likely more than just a football decision.
It's like when a GM on all sports says, the coach's job is safe. Because as soon as the team starts losing, the first thing the reporters ask is, so the coach okay here? And they always say he is, even though they know they haven't made a decision because they haven't really, you know, basically created the sausage, right? Because a lot of stuff goes into, changing a coach or a GM for that matter. So in this case, was Trevor Harris an example for the team to understand that anybody can go because the GM is unhappy and the team is unhappy with the way the games are going for them?
I think actually you're probably right on that one, because the last thing you expect when a team is struggling that they're going to trade their starting quarterback, who likely isn't the problem. So yeah, I think it could be a bit of a message sent. I think it's a message sent to really the veterans, because they're the ones that think that they have that safety net, because they've been around for a long while, and some have been productive. But I think if you're Edmonton, this is such a tough situation that you don't want players getting thinking that they're kind of above the team. So you want to make sure that the team is in it together to get out of it. I mean, that's not to say Trevor Harris wasn't, but I think just to say, look, we know the direction we want to go in. They didn't see Trevor Harris as a part of it, so he was kind of the easy guy to just throw out there and say, "Yeah, we're we just don't see this working with Trevor here, so let's send him out, and also at the same time send a message to the team that what's been happening has been unacceptable, and we're willing to make changes."
Yeah, and then, the other thing is, Harris is, on the good side, we spend a lot of time, in the media and podcasts and stuff, and looking at the negative side of everything, right? Which I'm trying to get away from here. I'd like to look at it from the positive perspective.
Mhm.
And the positive perspective to me is that while, he's leaving a team, he's going to a team that wants him. So we think we understand why he's not an Edmonton Elk any longer. I think it has to do with, his red zone efficiency. It has to do with wins and losses. It has to do with shaking up the locker room. It has to do with a GM right now who is under a lot of pressure because there have been a lot, we haven't talked about this either. There's a bit of goading too going on with Trevor Harris, that he's basically, not only is he maybe going to teach or to give a message to the other players in the locker room, but I think also the GM here is a little he's under a lot of stress. That, I mean, when a GM gets in trouble because he doesn't allow an equipment guy or a former equipment guy into the locker room, and that guy ends up dying, that's not a good look for the GM, and I think he might be under a little bit of stress, and that'd be a real that's a real anchor around his neck, I think, and stuff like that, because he's being questioned on everything he does now by the media, by, well, he just canned his color commentator.
So I know the team has just so we get at all the sides here. I think the team came out and said that that was not true, which you kind of expect them to come out and say that. But I think the other factor here is money too,
Absolutely.
right? If you can get Trevor Harris's contract off the books, and I mean we know that Cornelius and Prukop aren't commanding big salaries. There's a financial part of that too.
The
That
cap.
goes into the football factor, the
The
cap,
cap.
right? So
Absolutely.
Edmonton, like we know teams in the CFL aren't making a lot of money, so usually they try to find ways to cut the costs, and players are usually one way. I think in this case, I mean Montreal, we know their situation because with Vernon Adams likely done for the season based on, I mean, they don't bring in Trevor Harris if they think Vernon Adams is
Yeah,
going to be fine.
absolutely. Absolutely, and I think
But
you're right. I think there's more to that injury than the 6 games.
I think so. I mean, if it's a shoulder injury, because that's the one that knocked him out, um, we only have 2 months left of the season. With I mean, if we're adding
Yeah,
the break,
when you say the season, you're only talking about a handful of games, like 4, and the playoffs. So,
exactly.
like you said, 2 months. So, and then, there's the issue where they're in a position right now in the playoffs. They're in a position right now tied with Hamilton. They're in a position right now to put themselves with another home game, right? Because that matters too, right? Especially when we're talking about the season started as we predicted a year ago, that it would start probably with less people in the stands, and the hope for the CFL, why they wanted to do the season, is that more and more, the percentage would get higher and higher. Now that it's full attendance,
Yeah.
and a Montreal Alouette team that's fighting for first overall is going to sell some tickets in Montreal, because Montreal loves winners.
And yeah, like I didn't after that loss to Toronto, I thought Montreal was in a little bit of trouble because you saw Ottawa, take a step forward with Caleb Evans, and now we see that's kind of reversed the course a bit. But even Hamilton, with the dropping that game to the Argos, it's so tight, the East Division. Even Toronto, they have a little bit of separation, but one loss changes
Yeah,
that complexion completely. And if you're Montreal and you have a chance to get a Trevor Harris in a wide open East Division, and you think that your team is good enough to be a contender, by all means, you definitely go for it. And I think if you're Edmonton, yeah, you don't want to have to, you don't want to have to trade a Trevor Harris, like if you think he's good enough. But clearly, this was not just the money thing, but they felt the performance thing and just need to, revamp the team after what's been a very, very disappointing season. Likely is going to continue to be a disappointing season.
This is much like, and probably is, what the injury to Vernon Adams has created is a deadline deal. That's what this is. This is a
Yeah.
deadline deal where most of the salary's already been paid to the other team. Now this team is only taking a flyer on a player that they don't have to keep. David, that's the thing. They don't have to keep Harris. In the Canadian Football League, contracts aren't guaranteed. A team can walk away from a contract. The only way the players make sure that they get a lot of their money from their contract is, signing bonuses
Roster bonuses,
and
like if they're
yeah,
on the roster by a certain date. Like,
yeah,
and I don't know what Trevor Harris is. I mean, again, I know we had the conversation last week with Mike McCarthy, but if you're a fan, you want to know how. You don't even need to know how many years, how much Trevor Harris is making. That's personal stuff. I get that, but give fans the idea of how long is this guy in town for. We don't know
yeah,
what Trevor
yeah.
Harris's contract status is.
Yeah, gambling or not, gambling more, but gambling or not, fans love to play that game, that GM in their head, right? They like to be the coach, they like to be the GM, and they like to be the player. Some fans prefer one over the other, some fans prefer everything, but many fans like to have the information so that they can really feel like they're sitting in that chair, right? Because then they get to really scrutinize the amount of money a player is getting, right? And because of the cap, it's imperative, it's important. It also gives you an idea of how your team may or may not do. It's the same reason why, you and I think and agree that players' salaries should be open. There's no need to hide how much a player gets paid. It's part of the, you know, fans, with the advent of gambling, we know that, but it's also the fantasy sports. All this stuff people do when it comes to the ancillary uh, excitement and or fandom that takes place because of fantasy, because of gambling. It begs information.
It does. It does. And I think, yes, there's positive and negatives to always revealing salaries in all those cases. We've seen it in many sports where players get criticized because of how much they make and maybe not necessarily just on performance alone. But yeah, I mean, if you're Montreal, um, this isn't. I mean, some are saying that some are trying to compare this to the Zach Collaros situation in
Um,
Winnipeg. I think it's a little bit.
Possibly.
Possibly, I think it's a little bit different in that, Trevor Harris, he with him, it's like, he had that injury, he had some good games. There's been some inconsistencies with Zach Claros. Nobody knew anything. Like this was just at Winnipeg taking a shot in the dark. We have some semblance of what Trevor Harris is right now,
Yeah, I
and
think yeah. I think the other thing that has to be said, and I know we don't want to say it, but because I consider Trevor a friend of the show. He's been on a few times, and anyway, Trevor Harris has not reached the same heights that Caleros has in his career in the Canadian Football League. Zach Caleros, before being injured, was an MOP shoo-in if he had continued the pace he did in his last year in Hamilton.
mhm. Yeah,
And what he did with Winnipeg at the end of last year, what he did with Saskatchewan when he was there, the short time he was, and then basically left because of injury. They banked on him. Every team he's been to, in my opinion, has had him because they truly, truly believed, looking at the player's history, that being Zach Caleros, looking at what he's done and how accomplished he was. And most of all, David, I think, and this is becoming clear, I think, more and more to people, Zach Caleros is the prototypical Canadian Football League quarterback.
Mhm.
Mobile, intelligent, able to check down with the best of them, and also a great arm.
Yeah. I think that's the big one too. Is we knew Zach Claros had a good arm. It's just it's taken him a little bit of time to get back to showing that he had that great arm, and he's also in an offense that works perfectly for him as well. My question here is, does Trevor Harris fit into Montreal's offense? And I know some people are saying, well, hold on, the quarterback they have right now got them 2 straight wins in Matt Schilt.
Yes.
I will say it's against Ottawa. So there's you got to take it. You have to, understand that it's not like he beat a top team in the league, right? And it didn't. It wasn't. They both weren't convincing wins. They came down to the wire.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
if I'm Montreal, you're not leaving your chances this season, unfortunately, on the back of Matt Schultz. You're gonna try to build him up, but you feel like you have a better chance right now, I think, with Trevor Harris. And we'll see. I don't know if he'll get in this week. I think it's a little bit too soon to throw a person into a new situation right away, but I think he'll be very close, I think, to seeing him on the field.
Yeah, I think the best thing to say about Matthew Schultz is that he's dressed for think 35 or 36 games for the Montreal Alouettes. I think he started a couple of games and he lost both of them before this year, so he had not won a game. So and again, Matthew Schultz is a it's about potential, but in the Canadian Football League, potential's kind of meaningless. And the biggest reason why I say potential is meaningless because when it comes to contracts, you're not married to any contract. So potential can disappear really quick. And it has and does. If I can go back to Edmonton, I think part of the reason why Trevor Harris has gone is because they've decided to go to the younger quarterback. And I also believe Dakota Prukop is a better, specialty quarterback, third down, special plays. He's a better guy, a better fit for that. So when they say a team decision, they're telling the truth. A Trevor Harris sitting on the sidelines is not helpful. Contract and also his style. He needs to be the starter. It's like we talk about other sports, where, certain players, especially at a certain age, they have to be starters to become the players you expect them to be. If they're not starters, then they're just sitting there, right? And I understand about next man up and all that stuff.
No, for sure. I mean, I think yes, in today's CFL, you can't be too dependent on one player. We've seen that over and over again. You can't be dependent on one quarterback. But if that quarterback needs to be out there as much as possible, or you know, is considered to be a top echelon guy, you're not just gonna have him sitting on the sides and say, "Oh, he'll go better with practice." Well, no, that's not how it works. You need him
Not at all.
playing the games. You need him commanding the huddle. You need him working with the offense, and all the working with the coaches on the game plan that for each and every week.
Let's be clear that when you're paying Trevor Harris as much as you're paying him, he has to start. And if you don't have faith in him, and if you lose faith in him, and now you're saying, we're not sure that he's the guy, and then you look at the backup, Taylor Cornelius, and you say, well, he's not as good as Harris at this point, but dollar for dollar, we're better off. When they say team, they mean finances too. When they say team, they could mean the way a player fits in the locker room. When they say team, it can be, well, we've got another guy here that, pound for pound or dollar for dollar can do better than the guy we've got. So, all these decisions are about team. They're not personal. And from a positive perspective, I want to, if I didn't say it, I want to say it now or repeat myself, is that Montreal wants him.
Yeah.
They feel they can use him. They feel he's a better option. And you know why I think he is a better option? Matthew Schultz is maybe a bit better scrambler than Trevor Harris, but Trevor Harris has an arm. Trevor Harris does things right. And what you said and what we've said over the years is that is the reason why the Edmonton Elk or the Ottawa Redblacks are they unable to get into the end zone when they're in the red zone because of only Trevor Harris, or is it a team thing? Which goes to your comment about does the system favor a quarterback over another quarterback, a quarterback style over another quarterback style? Because that's the question. I think that's the biggest question Montreal had to answer in their own minds before they made this move. So they must believe that they can create a system for Trevor Harris to be successful.
I know we're going to talk about their game against Ottawa,
We can
but
start right now if you like.
I mean, if you look at it, I mean, Matt Schultz wasn't terrible. He had a fit, I think there was one play he had close to 55, 60 yards. He can throw the ball down the field. It's just though Trevor Harris, I think, will make fewer mistakes. I think his reads will be a little bit better. And that touchdown he threw to, I'm trying to remember now who he threw that. I think it was Jake Winicky. Like
Yes, yes.
that was kind of a hope and a prayer ball too,
Good
because
lord, that Jake Winicky sure does come up with some balls that when you say a ball in a ball in dispute, I
yeah,
mean that was as disputed a ball
it
as
was
as it gets. He was up
double
against
coverage in
two,
there.
yeah, two defenders. And it and the way he showed the ball when he got up, that was funny too. Well, he
Yeah,
didn't get up. From the ground, he let you know he had the ball. Now, he's a great player, and I don't know, Trevor Harris has had a good relationship with Ellingson. Trevor Harris, there are a few players, and I'm convinced, Ellingson, Wilder, those kind of players were there also because, of Trevor Harris. I'm just wondering if we can finish this trade on the subject of
yeah.
does it lead to more trades? Does Montreal make some change, like from the Edmonton perspective, right? And then also from the Montreal perspective, does Ellingson turn up in Montreal? Does Montreal try to ensure, that Harris has people that he knows and has worked well with in the past?
I wouldn't. It's a little surprising maybe that they didn't do it together. That they didn't try to get both of them. Maybe there's a cap reason for that. I mean,
Could
I
be.
could be. We don't know, and we probably will never know. But I think, yeah, I think I'm looking at the roster. I don't think there's actually anybody on that receiving staff that Harris has ever played with. So this is, yeah, it takes. That's why I don't expect him to play this week, because it takes time to get the timing down with your receivers, to learn the playbook, to know the calls, to know all the. There's a whole. He's learning, pretty much going to be learning a new language, in my opinion.
Yes. And
So
does he sit on the sidelines or does he not even dress?
I would say he sit on the sidelines, because really, who else do they have?
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
so he could be holding a clipboard and
yeah, I mean, but
taking.
that's also probably the best way for him to learn, is to be have that clipboard and say,
Yep.
okay, what's how do we call this game plan, and he can work right with the coaches there. So yeah, I think for this week, I mean, at the same time, it's such an important game for Montreal. This was a big win for them because, as you said, they're now second. They're second in the East. This is a massive game on Friday between the Argos and Montreal, and it's at home too.
Yes. Because they end up tied if Montreal wins, they're tied for first.
So that's a very interesting situation, because look, I give Montreal full credit. You had two games against a team you should beat in Ottawa, and they beat them. It took a little bit of luck. It took a little bit of hero magic in the first game. Second game, it was a little more handedly. So this is now where you have to say, okay, we got to buckle down, because we don't want to be in a position where we might lose out because of the crossover. Second place, that's likely where you want to be. But first place is right, as you said, Frank. It's right there. They're 2 points behind right now, and the winner of this, if
A win
Toronto
away.
wins, they get that tiebreaker, and if Montreal wins, they at least split the season series.
Yeah. Well, win and they're fighting for first and giving second a bit of a lift.
Yeah.
And if they lose, they're back into that battle with Hamilton, in second place, right? So, and we know that Hamilton's a lot better than a 4-5 record. I think we can agree with that, right?
If their offense can, if they can figure things out offensively, I think they're a team that should be first place, but they'll get there.
They miss Brandon. He's their trigger man. He's the guy that really, I mean, they have other guys. Don't get me wrong, but as long as I can remember, he's been a guy who's made beautiful plays to get the team to where Hamilton has been the past few years, which has been basically almost a lock in first place. This year, nobody's a lock. That's why this trade was made, and I believe there might have been some other suitors for Harris, and I think that adds, to the desire of a team to bring in that experienced quarterback because he might be going somewhere else, and you don't want him doing that because it's like they say, in hockey, those 4-point games, right? Back in the day, where it's not just about getting a player to help you win. It's to help the other team lose too.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know what Dane Evans' situation is like.
Ah,
I don't know if he's going to come back this season. We don't know. We don't think Hamilton might have considered if
I
they
think
felt.
they did.
I
And
think
Hamilton doesn't like anything better than taking ex-Argos.
this is
They love ex-Argos. They love the motivation, and I think Montreal. That was also a little bit of a. I think that was a positive. Harris back in the East. He had good seasons in the East. He had a lot of success with Ottawa. And I guess to conclude this conversation, how hard it must have been. The conversation after practice between Jamie Elizondo and Trevor Harris, where some of us felt, oops, I think he's telling them he's on the trading block. And then the word got out that he might have been on the trading block. In fact, he was, and then he got traded. Jamie Elizondo has been a big part of Trevor Harris's success, starting in Toronto, ending up in Ottawa, and then the both of them going to Edmonton, which is like the Winnipeg thing with Caleros.
Yeah, and I think if you're Trevor Harris, personally, I think you're counting your blessings that you're no longer in Edmonton, and now you're in a position where you're gonna
Well, it's a bit of a
hopefully
tire
compete.
fire going on over there. That's the thing, right? I said it already that the GM's under the microscope, and not only is he under the microscope, he is being questioned for the decisions that he makes. People believe the team is in disarray. There's the locker room's a little bit toxic. Some are suggesting, and the biggest influence on correcting that problem isn't the coach and isn't the players. It's the general manager for him to decide and to figure out, where are the spoiled apples.
Yeah, exactly.
If there are any. So, and he hasn't been, he had, Brock Sutherland has not had a lot of success in Edmonton. He inherited a really good team that Chris Jones put together, but that team has not gotten better. A little bit better than they were when Chris Jones left would have meant they would have been a Grey Cup contender because they won the Grey Cup when Chris Jones left. Since then, Edmonton has really fallen, and now I think this is basically them saying we have to accept the fact that we're not that good, and our players have to be made to understand that, what, we need to get better. Are you going to be a part of the solution, or do you want to not be here? Give us an indication. And that's Edmonton's under fire. And in the game, if we can talk about the game between them and Calgary, on an equal footing, and to me, Bo Levi Mitchell did not win that football game. Paredes, the foot and their defense and their special teams won that football game. Special teams had more touchdowns than the offense. Defense had more touchdowns than the well,
I was just about
Eagle,
to say,
right?
your team scores 39 points, and how many touchdowns did the offense have? One.
But did you hear Bo Levi? But I didn't throw an interception.
Oh, we're very glad he didn't throw an interception.
No, but
Oh,
that
it's
is.
important. It is important because we've been getting on him about that.
Hey, look, he didn't throw an interception, but I've mentioned it a lot because I feel it's an important stat and it's becoming more and more important. And I thank him for confirming what I said. I mean, that's exactly what it comes to, and good for him. Uh, I've also said that you don't have to do much positively in the Canadian Football League as a quarterback. The most important thing is that you improve field position, don't throw an interception, because in the Canadian Football League, the ball changes hands a lot. And if you have a good kicker, hello, does Calgary have the best kicker in the Canadian Football League? Definitely over the last 10 years, without a doubt, by a large margin. There have been kickers from time to time that have equaled Paredes' consistency, and his ability to score when it matters, but nobody's done it the way he has. Multiple, I mean, he had most of the points for the team.
Yeah, I was actually just looking up. I couldn't remember how many field goals he had. Oh,
Was it about five?
sorry, that's BC. Let's go to yeah. He had six.
Six. Okay.
Six.
Think about that.
You
18
know,
points.
I've seen NFL games where kickers have gone up to get four, maybe five, six in the CFL. To me, that's not really CFL football. Like to do six field goals, you want to be scoring more touchdowns, and I think that's. I mean, look, Calgary, you're not going to convince Calgary fans that things aren't looking up right now. I think their defense and their special teams have stepped up the last few weeks. I mean, Paredes has been a big part of that, and I think maybe the offensive struggles are being overshadowed a little bit. I think there could be better, but I mean, yeah, they're going in the right direction, and it's like if you're BC, if you're Saskatchewan, even Edmonton, you went. We had a real opportunity here where Calgary looked vulnerable, and
Yeah.
now they look unstoppable again.
And you know what? Along with the positive news that we can talk about, Calgary, we do know that Michael Riley considers the fact that he has to be better. And
Hmm.
for me, BC is disappointing because, they were making a comeback. They were coming back to respectability and maybe even contention in the Canadian Football League. These past couple of weeks have given me a different impression, and I'm kind of disappointed because I really expected more from them. And they've hit a now is Calgary that good, or is BC not as good as I thought? That's the question I asked myself. And I think it's a bit of both.
I think so. I think BC, they were hitting everything. Everything was going right for them. Look, the Lucky Whitehead injury is
Oh, they
having
miss
a big
him.
impact.
Yeah,
You
totally.
lose a weapon like that on special teams, on offense. Yeah, your offense is going to struggle. It's not forget BC does not have a running game. They are what I call the Philadelphia Eagles of the CFL, because it's funny because the NF and the Eagles, I think in their last game against the Bucks, ran the ball I think maybe once or twice, and fans were cheering when the running back got a 2 yard run. Like I know that in the CFL the running game isn't the biggest spotlight of the offense,
Oh, it should
but
be. It
it should
should
be.
be. I
It can't be.
totally
You can't neglect it. They're
I
neglecting it.
I totally disagree with that thinking because in my
Yeah.
opinion, I truly believe that in the Canadian Football League, you need a good running back. And the key with the running back, what I'm beginning to believe, he has to have good hands. And the Argos didn't play today this weekend. They
Mhm.
play next week. DJ Foster is the perfect Canadian Football League running back. Brandon Banks. We the list is long. Of guys who run and catch. The best player in the Grey Cup last year, Andrew Harris.
Yeah.
That's what makes him different than a Stanback, who, by the way, got hurt. Um, That's what makes him more important. Can you imagine if Stanback spent more time catch if they could work out him with plays catching the ball and running? He does the odd time, but he's a real strong runner. But I think the running backs today, there's three things they have to do, and they have to do them equally well. That's block, catch, and run.
I think when you look at really the best backs in the CFL, when you look at William Stanback, even James Wilder Jr., they can do both, but they can do it at high volumes too, right?
Right.
And some teams they like even with the Argos, if we want to bring them into it against Hamilton, they ran the ball a few times and they said, "Well, we're not getting anywhere, so we're going to scrap it." Well, I mean, don't you think the other team's not going to realize, "Hey, you're not running the ball, so we can change our
Key.
defensive. We're going to try to beat the pass."
Absolutely.
And so if I'm BC, that's a concern. Like you cannot continue to think that you're going to succeed without having some semblance of a running game because Michael Riley will then have to stand into the pocket more than you'd like. Michael Riley will take hits that you don't want him to take, and Michael Riley could get hurt. And
And
I
there
mean,
won't be checkdowns downfield as open and as visible in the time that he has to throw the ball.
exactly. And I think if you're BC, when you lose a receiver like Mikey Whitehead, you should say, okay, but we can rely on our running back more because we may not be able to get those plays on field. A running game also shortens the field for you, so you're not facing those long second and 10, second and 8. If you're facing a second and 3, that's a short completion. That moves the chains. That gets you fresh out of downs. That keeps your offense in a rhythm. But if you're not
And it
able
keeps the
to,
defense wondering if you're gonna run or pass. The run
well,
pass
and
option, the RPO plays beautifully into that.
and it keeps your offensive line from going, all right, we don't have to drop back every play. We can push forward.
Yes.
We can put, instead of the defensive line coming at us all the time, we can go at them, and push them back a bit. Because right now, when you're forcing your offensive line to have to stand back and hold things down, you're putting a lot of pressure on them, and the defense will take that. They'll take the chance to go at you. But if you go at them and you push them, I think it makes a big difference. And in this game, in my opinion, that was likely one of the differences because they ran the ball, if I'm looking here, if my math is correct, 11 times. I think in the CFL, there should be no reason why you can't get at least 20 carries from, even if you do it by committee with a couple of guys. Like Lamar Durant had an 18-yard run, so they were trying to get the receivers involved that way. Nathan Rourke had 3 carries. Like your quarterback almost outproduced your running back. That's not good enough in the CFL today. You need your running back to have more of an impact on the game.
Yes, and here I'll give you the perfect example, David, of everything that you just talked about and what I talked about as well. 2 words: Kadeem Carey. He's made a difference with Calgary. He has
Yes.
helped them to win. When you consider, you have to ask yourself the question: if the quarterback's not dominating, which in the Canadian Football League is the easiest, not shouldn't say the easiest, but the most obvious way that a team can dominate, that a team can win, is at the position of quarterback. We know that defenses can smother quarterbacks, so they're very important. We know how important special teams are. But Kadeem Carey is running and making the other team think about the run. And he's able to roll off tackles and that kind of stuff. So guess what? He's a pretty good running back. And I think his success has led to Calgary's success in recent games.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, he might not be getting like there's times where he gets pushed more than others, but what's the best way that you can take pressure off your quarterback? The quarterback can, sit back, let the running back take a little bit more abuse. Unfortunately, I hate to say that, but that's
Yes.
what a good running game does. It takes a little bit of it keeps your quarterback upright more so because he's not having to, stand in the pocket. So
Yes.
I think that's what Kadeem Carey has done, and very limited times too. Like he hasn't been given all the rock all the time, but I think Calgary is finally realizing, hey, we might have a running back here, which is kind of scary when you think about it. Because well, I mean, we know they've had running backs in the past, like they've had punishing running backs that opens up a lot more for the offense. So I don't know why it's taken them this long to realize, hey, maybe if we get the running game going, our offense would be better.
Well, I think like everybody else, David, you got to find the guy. You got to find the guy that can do what you need him to do. Because every team, I think every team defines the running game in their own way, right? You and I can sit here and go, well, the best way is to have a guy who can, like I said, the three qualities: block, run, and catch. Those are three great qualities for running backs. But how easy is it to find somebody who can do all three? And then if you can't, what two do you decide on, right? And how do those two fit into how your game is played and how well you play? That's the issue in my mind. That's the issue that is most difficult to deal with. So
Yeah, yeah. And I just think that you look at the teams that are successful right now. Most of them have a running game or some semblance of a running game. We know that Winnipeg is the gold standard for that. They can beat you both ways. I think that's what makes Winnipeg such a hard team to go up against because they can do it both ways, and they're going to continue to do it both ways until a team can stop them.
we haven't mentioned Winnipeg. They ensured that they're in the playoffs, and pretty soon they'll ensure that they're in first, depending on how hot one of the teams that are directly behind them get. But their full value for their win, they did a masterful job against Edmonton. Calgary looked great against BC, and that leaves us with the last game that we said we wanted to talk about, and that, of course, is the Montreal Ottawa game. I think we saw Montreal win, and like you said, it was one of those wins that basically said, "Oh well, we've got a shot. Let's just this team can be beaten," and they did. But it took some really good plays for them to beat Ottawa. Ottawa was not that bad, not that far out of it, even though the score of 27-16 might imply that 11-point spread. I think has to do more with the effectiveness of Montreal and their receivers and their run game. But now their run game's been a little bit impacted in that game.
I think so. I mean, the thing about Montreal is they don't want to be throwing the ball as much. They like to rely on their run game. I mean, William Sandbeck's injury does impact that in a way. I mean,
You
Curtis
think maybe that added to the importance of getting another quarterback? Because we talked about how the game is split up between different teams on the team, right?
Yeah, I mean, Curtis Cameron is paying had 19 carries in this game, so they're committed to still running it,
Yep.
regardless of who's there. But at the same time, if you're looking for your quarterback to throw 30 times, is that something you want Matt Schultz doing? Even Vernon Adams,
I don't think you want anybody doing that.
they didn't even like Vernon Adams doing it 34 times. But what I think Trevor Harris can do is, with the limited times he will throw it, he can be a lot more efficient and push the ball down the field. Of course, the big thing here is, can they get it into the end zone? David Cote hasn't been called upon too much to do the kicking. He had 3 in this game, which, I mean, now that's kind of a norm in the CFL. If you don't have your kicker getting at least 3 field goals, it
Yeah.
seems like a poor
We've
outing.
seen we've seen 0 for 3.
Yeah, I mean, Winnipeg is that's probably the only
Yeah,
thing that
really. That's
Winnipeg
their weakest link.
is their weakest link right now is the kicking game, but
They're
they
very
haven't even
patient with their kicker too.
because they haven't had any close games that have been blown by a
He
kicker.
hasn't cost them anything.
Yeah, so
Makes
I think
sense.
I think if you're I think if you're Montreal, you want to get I think the passing game needs to come move a bit because at some point a team with is going to just say, we're just going to stop the run and you're going to make you beat us with the pass. Actually, that's kind of what the Argos did when they played them. Is look, Montreal was doing very well in the running game that day, and what happened? As soon as they told Vernon Adams to try to throw it, he made mistakes, and that was the reason why they lost. Montreal, I know they want to keep the run game going because it allows them to dominate the time of possession and all those things. So I think if you're a team right now, your goal should be to stop the run and force Montreal to beat you with the pass, and Ottawa can
Absolutely.
get them to do that.
Yeah. So thinking about the Montreal Alouettes, the Argos are going to see them in their next game. I was hoping to go. Montreal is a great place to go see a football game, but I'm trying to arrange stuff that might need to be done prior or during that time. So I might not have the good fortune of being able to go, but I'm going to do my best to go. That's a game that I'm looking forward to, obviously, because we cover the Argos, and I haven't been in Montreal in a while. We talked already about the fact that that game creates a nice competition for first, second, and third. It has ramifications on all three of those playoff positions.
Yeah, that I think that's the big thing right there. Is I know that Winnipeg is running away with the West. Second place is very much open there. In the East, it's 1, 2, 3 are all interchangeable within the next few weeks. I think if you're Montreal, this is a home game. This is a game that you're hoping your favorite to win because Toronto just got their first win on the road in Hamilton. Maybe that kickstarts them to say we can get things going a little bit here and show that we're not just a team that wins at home. But
Right.
and I think if you're Montreal, that's a tough defense to go up against. We know how good the Argos defense has been this season.
They know Chris Jones in Montreal.
They do, right?
They
And
know him. Great Cup with the Als.
so I think if you're Montreal right now, this is the biggest. I think this is their biggest game of the season.
Yeah,
I
and they
think
needed a quarterback because they were going to be up against a defense that will tear apart a quarterback that's not that experienced. I think we've seen the confidence level of Evans suffer deeply because of that Toronto Jones defense.
I think so. And I think if you're Toronto, you know, this is, Montreal's still a little unsettled, right? I know
Mhm.
Toronto has had their issues offensively, but their defense continues to show that they can give the offense the amount of time and they'll give them the opportunities as we saw against Hamilton to go out and win the game.
Yeah,
Now, if you're Montreal, what they did right in the last game as Toronto was we're going to keep the ball away. We're going to run it. We're going to make sure that the defense stays on the field. And I
yeah,
think if you're Toronto, you got to find ways to get yourself off the field and give your offense more opportunities. And I think actually for Toronto, as you said, Frank, they got a running back in DJ Foster who I think yes, he's being underutilized. You need to use him more because too often that offense is coming off the field quickly and
yeah.
putting
And
them.
in the last game, they could have used another running back in the backfield from
Yeah,
time to time. I know they've underused him, but they depend. They went from he went from feast to famine or famine to feast, right? And I think there has to be a happier medium for him to be effective.
I do.
And um, we talked about Calgaryitis, the thing that Calgary has. The Argos are just like that. That the success that the Argos have had is much similar to the last success that Calgary had. Their offense isn't that effective, but the other parts of their game are very effective, and they give the offense a chance to win. It's so important in football that all the phases of the game can make big contributions. And good for Calgary to figure out how to win. And Toronto, when they go into Montreal, it won't be about how much they score. It'll be how little they allow the opposition to score, and the difference in special teams between the two teams. It's all going to be impactful. And the running game, of course, as always, is important, as we discussed. And they have found Montreal has a running back. He over 80 yards. I think over 80 yards he ran. So they don't miss Stanback. Montreal has constantly had great running backs, and that tradition continues.
Yeah, I think so. I totally agree with that.
Ottawa and Hamilton. Now, we just talked about how Montreal has made hay with a weaker team in the East, being Ottawa. Hamilton gets an opportunity to prove that not that Ottawa's a pushover, but a team that you can beat it. You can, as long as you don't beat yourself, you can beat Hamilton, and that right now is the definition of when you play Ottawa for teams. If you don't beat yourself, you can win.
Yeah, no, exactly. And if you're Hamilton, if you lose this game, that you're now facing a situation where the crossover team could come over and take you out of the
Absolutely,
playoffs, and that's
absolutely.
that's crucial for them.
And that's why the BC slipping is a problem, and why I'm disappointed. They're going to get a chance this coming week to play Winnipeg, the best team in the Canadian Football League. Their first game after clinching a playoff spot, right? BC could really use, and Michael Riley could really use a good game. If they're going to make some noise and try to keep pace with Calgary, and if they do keep pace with Calgary, Calgary's pace could lead to a crossover for either BC, Calgary, or even Saskatchewan, who have been slipping.
Yeah, I mean, right now it just seems like second place in the West, nobody really wants it. And actually, if I say it, who really wants to go through the West right now with the way Winnipeg is going? I think if you're a team, you might want to take your chances with the crossover to the East right now.
Absolutely. So Winnipeg has nothing to prove. They proved so much this year. BC has a lot to prove. Speaking of proving, can Calgary prove that they are for real and prove that Saskatchewan is a great pretender? The Saskatchewan started this season as maybe the favorite in the Western Division beside Winnipeg. Like many thought that they could compete with Winnipeg. Calgary's said no, they can't even compete with us.
Yeah,
Is
I
this the
think
week where Saskatchewan does something to raise their profile in a positive way?
I think they needed this break right now just to kind of reset because yeah, Saskatchewan again, I think Calgary right now, based on the last few weeks, is the second best team in the West based on performance and
Yeah,
results.
I have them. That's what I have them as. I have them. They are 3 wins in a row. Does that for you, right?
And if you're Saskatchewan, the last thing you want is to lose that home field advantage
Yeah,
in that first round of the playoffs. So they have a lot to play for. This is the last thing you want. Sorry, this is the last thing you want to have happen is you lose what I thought would have been an easy second place finish for them because I thought they were running away
yeah,
with it based on BC wasn't looking great and Calgary struggling like we never thought they
and
would.
and Edmonton even worse.
Yeah.
It's basically a 4-team division, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing now. What we're finding out with Ottawa, who you know they looked okay, they looked good, and then all of a sudden, not so much. I don't know if they can straighten things out. Um, they need a lot of breaks. They need some great play by their quarterback, but they're relying on quarterbacks that haven't proven much in Ottawa. And BC the opposite. This is the crazy thing, the quality of a Michael Riley, and he can't lift that team, and that team can't, and a pretty good coach too in in BC. I'm very hopeful. I'll give you the last few seconds of the show.
All I'm going to say is I think there's a lot of teams right now that need to solidify what type of team they want to be, and I think this is the most important week in the CFL. I'll keep saying it, but I think this is exactly what the CFL wants is some every game to really matter. And I think right now every single game in the schedule matters greatly, and it should hopefully lead to a very entertaining weekend.
I think you're right, David. Thank you very much for being on the show as usual.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Candid Frank Stanisci for David Morassutti. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time. Enjoy the football.